We begin in The Hague, where just this past Friday, the UN's top court delivered an interim ruling on the case of genocide brought against Israel by South Africa. The I.C.J. ordered so-called provisional measures to protect Palestinians from genocidal acts in Gaza. However, it stopped short of calling for a ceasefire. This was a highly anticipated ruling. It was broadcast around the world. The I.C.J.'s rulings are legally binding. However, they can be difficult to enforce, especially while Israel enjoys the protection of the United States at the UN Security Council, where the U.S. has the power to veto. However, there is no doubt that the ruling did not go Israel's way. The court has found a plausible risk that genocide is occurring or could occur. And that will be difficult for the Israeli government to shrug off, try as it might. Now, this news coming when it did on a Friday afternoon, very late in our production schedule, means that we haven't had time to fully examine the legal implications. But Tarek Nafa has been following the coverage, and he joins me now. What are the initial repercussions there?
Late Friday, after all day taking stock of the I.C.J. decision at The Hague, ambassadors from Arab countries gathered at the United Nations to discuss a key question: what next? After allowing the media to film the opening portion of the meeting, the rest was behind closed doors so talks could continue in private. Before the meeting, the Palestinian representative said now was the time to seize the moment.
If one to look at the provisional measures separately and collectively, it gives the clear message that in order to do all the things that they're asking for, you need a ceasefire for it to happen.
UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres issued a statement through his spokesperson acknowledging the I.C.J. ruling, but offering few insights on how he views the judgment.
Is the Secretary General disappointed that the I.C.J. did not call for a ceasefire?
The Secretary General is not here to do color commentating on decisions of the independent court of the UN. His position has been what it is. It's been very clear. What the Secretary General thinks and what he would like to see is an immediate humanitarian ceasefire.
All eyes now turn to the Security Council. It seems likely that by the middle of next week, the Council will call for an open meeting to discuss the rulings by the I.C.J. Then the question becomes, will Algeria, the Arab member of the Council, begin to circulate a draft resolution calling for an immediate ceasefire? Diplomatic sources are telling us all indications are pointing to exactly that. Gabriel Elizondo, Al Jazeera, at the United Nations in New York.
17 judges of the UN's top legal body took part in the deliberations on South Africa's case against Israel, brought under the Genocide Convention. Their ruling, read out by the court's president, concluded that South Africa's claims were plausible, that the situation in Gaza was very grave and urgent, and that Israel, by the dehumanizing language of its leaders, had shown intent. She directly quoted Israel's president and its defense minister.
Minister Gallant stated, speaking to Israeli troops on the Gaza border, I quote, "I have released all restraints. You saw what we are fighting against. We are fighting human animals. This is the ISIS of Gaza."
The court's president then read out the judges' decisions.
Israel must, in accordance with its obligations under the Genocide Convention, in relation to Palestinians in Gaza, take all measures within its power to prevent the commission of all acts within the scope of Article 2 of the Convention.
A broad ruling which included an order that Israel properly deal with the dire humanitarian situation, but there was no specific call for an immediate ceasefire. Outside the court, South Africa's foreign minister gave her reaction to reporters.
In exercising the order, there would have to be a ceasefire. Without it, the order doesn't actually work.
Madam Minister, they didn't specifically call for a ceasefire. Are you disappointed that they didn't specify that?
I have no way that I'm going to say I'm disappointed. I hoped for it, but the fact of delivering humanitarian aid, the fact of taking measures that reduce the levels of harm against persons who have no role in what Israel is combating, for me, requires a ceasefire.
This is just an interim ruling. This case is expected to go on for a number of years, but there is another important landmark in just 1 month's time. Israel has been ordered to produce a report for the judges explaining how it's complying with this ruling. James Bays, Al Jazeera, The Hague.